true or perfect meditation, like I mentioned earlier, we let go of thinking mind. Not that the thoughts cease, not that thoughts don't keep happening, but we let go of the attachment to it. Do you see the difference? I could have a beautiful car, and I can let go of that car in two different ways. One is to just let it go by like letting someone take it away, and I never see it ever again. But a second way to let go of that car is to still have the car, still drive the car, but now there's no attachment to the car. And I have let go of the car, even though I'm driving in the car. And this second meaning is the actual deeper meaning of the Buddha's teachings. The Buddha is not saying that you have to let go in the sense of getting rid of everything, although maybe it might be good to get rid of some of the things that we have in our life, but that's not the primary meaning. The primary fundamental meaning is even in the midst of your relationships, your having your house, having a car, having a job, having a partner or lover or spouse, even in the midst of all of these things, to let go. Maybe still having it, but having let go while having it. This non-attachment is very important. So, in perfect meditation, we let go of attachment to thinking mind, even though we still have thinking mind. We let go of that attachment, and we are simply resting in being, the infinite mind of vast, spacious beingness. Now, for most of us, that kind of meditation and practice seems very difficult because we've never done it before, and it takes some time and some practice to get to a place where we really can let go that much and practice that kind of meditation. In Zen, we call that shikantaza, which means translated as just sitting, just being, just present, just here and now. No other method than just being right here and now. However, the Buddha knew that most of us can't just suddenly do that kind of meditation practice. So, we have all these wonderful preliminary meditations that we can practice to prepare our hearts and our minds and our bodies and our whole being to prepare us for that more true and deep and perfect kind of meditation. So I offered, because there were so many beginners in the room, and because I have a friend in here who really prefers the way of prayer over meditation, I decided, okay, let's do a prayerful kind of meditation, which the Buddha taught, called metta, loving kindness. And I guided it in a more prayerful kind of way. Now, for me, whether you want to practice meditation with a prayerful understanding of the presence of God, or whether you want to practice meditation from a more scientific point of view of just, technique and step-by-step processes, doesn't matter to me as long as you meditate and as long as you continue to mature and evolve and become all that you were meant to be. That's what matters to me. So if you want to do it in a prayerful way or a more process kind of way, fine with me. But you see, you may call ultimate reality God, and that's fine with me. It's fine with me because I know that this ultimate reality's real name isn't God. Because God is just an English human word, a symbolic representation. The ultimate reality is beyond all symbolic representations. So, but I'm fine with people calling it God, or calling it Buddha nature, or calling it universal spirit, or whatever, source of all life. The problem isn't what you're calling it. The problem is that we sometimes use the excuse of labeling it, thinking now we understand it, and that we can just we seem to put all of our ideas on it as an excuse not to investigate the reality of it. You see? Have you ever done that? I remember one friend of mine, was telling me about going into the forest, and seeing all these different wonderful flowers. And I was walking and just enjoying. I didn't know the names of these flowers, but I was just enjoying, wow, this kind of leaf and that kind of petal and that color and those kind of leaves and those little bristles and, furry parts of the flower, different kinds. And I was just fascinated with the diversity and variety of the beauty there. But my friend was like, oh, that's a Senilica canema or whatever. That's just a da-da-da-da-da. My friend wasn't really with the flower, because my friend labeled it and was content with the label and no longer was able to go beyond the label to the actual reality in front of him with this beautiful manifestation of the universe or the divine in the form of a flower. In the form of whatever this is. I don't even want to say flower, because it's not just by saying flower, I'm defining it and categorizing it and limiting it, but it actually is more than that. Thich Nhat Hanh says, if you really look deeply into anything in the universe like a flower, not only will you see flower, but you'll see the sun and the rain and the minerals and the air and all the universe that makes this flower possible. You see? And the same way, when we practice this with our relationships to other humans, instead of saying, oh, black people, oh, gay people, oh, women, all, or men, Buddhists, Jews, whatever. It's like, when we do that, we stop relating to the reality of it. Because we've now used the name or the symbolic representation to now be what we're relating to, no longer relating to the actual reality of it. And that causes us to make the mistake of, it just makes it more easy to discriminate and to be prejudiced and to shun and exclude. But when we practice opening to the reality and the deep reality of a being or a thing or a person or a place or an experience, it goes way beyond our labels. And now we can really engage it with our whole heart. And this is really what meditation is about. So, for me, whether you want to connect with the ultimate reality that you might call God, or whether you want to connect with a Buddha, who, by the way, all of us are potential Buddhas, and anyone who is already a Buddha in the universe, basically it boils down to this: they no longer believe in the illusion of separation. They have fully realized and embody their oneness with the ultimate source. So because of that, when you meet a Buddha, it is exactly the same as meeting God or the ultimate reality. Because a Buddha no longer sees or experiences or makes any separation between him or herself and ultimate reality. That's why a Buddha is a perfect channel of God, or a perfect channel of divine universal reality, whatever you want to call it. A Buddha is someone who is a perfect channel of Buddha nature. And that's why that's why it's okay to pray to a Buddha. Because in effect you're praying to God. Because a Buddha is a perfect channel of God, if you want to use the word God. Now, anyone who's a traditional Buddhist in the room, please stop, cringing. I know Buddhists don't use those kinds of words, but for the sake of those who are from a background where the word God is meaningful, I'm using that language. And so, in Christianity, for example, perhaps Jesus was a Buddha, and that's why he was able to say, "He or she who has seen me has seen the Father," or the divine parent. Because when a person no longer believes in separation, no longer embodies separation, but is at complete atonement with their source, then To see them is to see the source. They are the source in manifestation now, because they are a pure channel of that. Maybe Jesus was a Buddha. It's definitely Siddhartha Gautama, the Shakyamuni Buddha. He was a Buddha. And all of us are potential Buddhas. And you know, when Jesus said something about, being the only begotten Son of God, that's just poetic language. It doesn't mean that Jesus is the only Son of God, excluding everyone else being a son of God or daughter of God. That's not really what it means. What it means is he knew his true reality in such a way, knowing that the ultimate source considers every single being in the universe as if they are the only beloved child. That's how a Buddha loves us. That's how the divine loves us, as if each and every being in the universe were the only being in existence. And that's the meaning of only begotten Son of God. It means that Jesus realized that's how much he is loved, as if he is the only child in existence. That's how much he knew love. And when we awaken to that same reality that Jesus awoke to, and that the Buddha awoke to, and all enlightened teachers have awakened to, then we will know the same reality. It is a feeling as if all the Buddhas, the ultimate source of reality in all its various forms, loves me as if I am the only child in this universe. That is enlightenment. That's why I always think it's so silly, these arguments between Christians and Buddhists and others, like, no, you should only pray to God. Oh no, we can pray to the Buddhas too. It's like, well, whatever. No difference. No difference. Because you're praying to the source or the embodiment of infinite light, infinite love, infinite life. And that's what the word Amitabha means. But Amitabha is also just a word, just like the word God is just a word. So we must go beyond the words, but you can still use the words as long as you're not attached to the words, you see. I love the word Amitabha and I love the word Buddha, but I can use it because I'm not attached to the word Amitabha. I'm not attached to the word Buddha. And you can use the word God as long as you're not attached to your narrow, small definition conception of God. But you can still use it. Just like you can drive a car but still not be attached to the car. It's when we're attached to our words and our definitions and our concepts and our notions that religious wars occur. Denominational splits occur. And I'm not saying we shouldn't use thoughts and words and language and symbols. We have to as human beings. That's the way we talk. But we do it without attachment, without dogmatism, without fundamentalism, without rigidity. We talk with an openness of wanting to meet each other heart to heart. Because after all, we're all just baby Buddhas growing up, maturing into fully enlightened Buddhas. That's the Buddhist way of saying it. You could say it in the Jewish or Christian or Muslim way, that we're all children of the divine, growing up to be fully mature children of the divine. Well, I've gotten off topic tonight. But thank you for listening. Maybe that's what some people in the room needed to hear. So I guess I'll start on the teachings on the Four Noble Truths, if you want to still hear some of it. Okay. So the Buddha taught Four Noble Truths. The first is the truth of suffering. And the second is that there is a cause to suffering. And that it's not just some random accident that we're suffering and not some imposition of some angry, judgmental Zeus God figure, just zapping us just because he's having a bad day. But there's actual causes of suffering that we can do something about. And that there is the possibility of the cessation of the causes of suffering, and therefore suffering. And there is a path to the cessation of the causes of suffering, which means then the path to the end of suffering. So, this is Buddha's teachings on life. It all boiled down to this for him. Now, there are an infinite number of other teachings, but basically all those other teachings still boil down to this. The Buddha's bottom line was transformation of suffering. Jesus' bottom line was forgiveness, healing, and love. Other teachers' bottom lines may have been other things, but what is your bottom line is the real question. So, the Buddha's bottom line is the transformation of suffering. Now, I'm only going to teach you the basic understanding of this tonight. I don't have time to go into the deeper Zen way of looking at this. Maybe I can do that next week. But there are deeper ways of looking at this. But I'm going to just give you the simple way of looking at this, just at face value. So, here's this thing that we don't want, suffering, right? So how do we attain the cessation of suffering? Well, first we have to understand the causes. And then we need to walk the path. It's not enough to just want the cessation of suffering. I mean, all beings want the cessation of suffering. But you're not going to get the cessation of suffering just by wanting it only. There has to be an understanding of the causes so that you can stop creating the causes. And you need to start walking the path toward happiness and the cessation of suffering. So we need to understand the causes and the path. This is very, very important. And, the Buddha once talked to a whole bunch of religious people in India during his time. And they were talking about how they enjoy these religious practices of praying to the gods to help them, doing rituals, chants, sacrifices, animal sacrifices sometimes, to appease the gods and ask for their favor. Or even washing themselves in the holy river of the Ganges. And there's nothing wrong with the rituals and the prayers and the chants and the river, bathing in the river. There's nothing wrong with that. But the Buddha was questioning their understanding of what they were doing and the attitude in which they were doing it. And this is the way the Buddha said. If you are on one side of a river where there's a lot of sadness and poverty and disease and filth, and on the other side of the river, on the other shore, there are golden sand and beautiful flowers and beautiful people having a good time over there. What do? Do you say, "Oh, other shore, I pray to you, I beseech you, please help me, please come to me"? That would be very foolish. The Buddha said it's wiser to go about creating a process by which you can build a raft and go across the river to the other shore. That is a much wiser way of practice than just begging external deities to help you or relying on rituals that may or may not really do anything. The important thing is to use your own true wisdom that the divine has already instilled within you and use that wisdom and create the raft to go to the other shore of happiness, away from suffering. I learned this lesson when I was 5 years old. I was being bullied by the second graders when I was in kindergarten. Every afternoon during recess time, I would try to climb up the ladder to the slide to slide down, and they would pull me down before I could get to the slide every single time. So one day I asked my mom what I should do. She was gardening, so she wasn't really paying much attention to me. So she said, "Oh, just ask God." She might not have thought what a profound impact she made on me. I took her seriously. Maybe she was being flippant, but I took her seriously. So I did. I prayed, "Dear God, please show me. Please help me. Make these bullies stop, bullying me." So I listened for an answer. Nothing. Well, okay. I don't know. Maybe God is busy doing something else, or I don't know. Maybe he's thinking about the answer. So anyway, the next day, going to school, and it's recess time again. And here come the bullies. And so I tried to climb up the ladder, and they caught me, and they pulled me down. I couldn't do it. So I went to another part of the playground, and I just like, what am I going to do? And I prayed one more time. And all of a sudden, instead of hearing God tell me what to do, or instead of God zapping the bullies with lightning or something else, instead I had an inner wisdom bubble up from within my spirit. And you could say it's from God, but for me it was an experience of, well, it's already within me because that's what God created me with. So why not take advantage of the inner wisdom that's already within your own being? So that's what happened. This bubble of a thought arose in my 5-year-old mind. And it said, run to the slide, climb as fast as you can, wait at the top until they all catch up, and then slide down. And that's what I did. I ran, I went to the top, I waited for them. When they almost caught up to me, I slid down, I went, and they laughed and laughed and laughed, and they did the same thing. They slid down all crazy. And then we had so much fun going up and down the ladder and the slide. They forgot that they were bullies. They were just children, like me, having fun. And they forgot their attachment to the identity or label of bully. And so, as a 5-year-old child, I realized very early on that God does not answer prayer simply by external kinds of things, like zapping someone with lightning or something that you want to be zapped. Rather, the way God answers prayer is by the wisdom that has already been created, built in within you. There's a deep Buddha wisdom already within you. So instead of begging externally for answers, go to the answers that are already built within your system. Go to the deep inner Buddha wisdom already within you and allow that to come forth. Because the answers are there already. You don't have to beg for them. You're built in. You were created with it. The Christians and the Jews would say, you were created in the image of God. The Buddhists would say you were created, or you are a manifestation of Buddha nature already. So you are a potential. You have that inner wisdom already. So look to that within, and let that come forth. This is the true way of prayer, and to finding the answers to prayer, not constantly begging. But prayer is not about begging. Prayer is about going within. And you can do that through true prayer, or through meditation, or just by being like a 5-year-old child. Just open-hearted. That's why I think Jesus and others said, if you want to enter to the kingdom of heaven, then become like a little child. And in fact, when we meditate, it is a way of becoming that child once more. Because we're letting go of all the incrustations of all the crazy ideas and beliefs that we have built around our heart as adults. And we come back to the original essence and the original innocence of our true Buddha nature, our true childlike nature that is originally built in within us at birth, or as Buddhists say, before birth too. Okay, well, let's see. So tonight I'm just going to briefly talk about the causes and the path, but I'm going to go into more detail next week. So, what are the causes of suffering? Well, attachment is usually mentioned as the primary cause of suffering. However, attachment is really only one of three in the list. And sometimes you can say one thing of a list to mean the whole list, you know. I'm trying to think of an example. Like when you say one part of something, but you're really meaning the whole thing, you know. But I can't think of one right now.
The White House.
The White House. But what you really mean is the president and the whole governmental system. I mean, you know, you're just using one thing to mean the whole thing. So attachment is used usually to mean the three basic delusions or poisons within our mind. So I usually label them as craving, aversion, and you can think of it as delusion or ignorance. Tashi always says indifference, which is a very interesting translation. But anyway, so we tend to cause ourselves suffering because we crave things for things, and we become attached to things rather than appreciating things as they are without attachment. But we quickly attach when we appreciate or when we want. But the secret to happiness is to have things without attaching to them. Now we also do the equal thing of aversion, meaning that we resist things. Instead of meeting whatever's happening in the moment with an open heart and of just an opportunity to learn something or to be of help or service, we cringe from it and we want to push it away. And this action of pushing away also causes us suffering. And you could say that craving and aversion are twins of each other. They're just two kind of sides of the same kind of reality of attachment. One is attachment to pleasure, and the other is attachment to non-suffering or non-unpleasantness. Right? So you're attached to wanting not unpleasantness. Now, but to me, the real true cause of the suffering is delusion and ignorance of reality, because that is the basis for which we create craving and aversion, in my opinion. Other teachers would say aversion is the number one cause. Other people would say craving is the number one cause. I'm of the camp that delusion is the number one cause. But honestly, they're all such primary causes. All three really are causes. But I say delusion because based on our ignorance of the way reality is, we then crave for things and we resist things, when in fact our true happiness is letting go of the craving, letting go of the resistance, and just being present. So I want to just talk about what we're deluded about. Just mention, and I'll go in more detail next week. We are deluded about four things primarily that causes great suffering. One is we're deluded about impermanence. We're deluded about non-self or the self. We're deluded about all of that. We're deluded about the nature of suffering. And we're deluded about the reality of nirvana. I think tonight I only have time to talk about the first two. Maybe even just the first one. Let me see how much time I have. So, because there's this internal belief that certain things should be permanent, then instead of being with reality, which is all about change and evolution and impermanence, we then start creating suffering for ourselves because now we're resisting the way reality actually is. Instead of flowing in harmony with reality, we're resisting it because of this belief. And it may be an unconscious belief. Not all beliefs are conscious. Many beliefs are unconscious. For example, what's the reality? I'm growing older. My hair is actually receding. My hairline's receding. I have more gray hairs this year than ever before. You can't see them yet, but I can. I have more wrinkles now than I did 10 years ago. A friend of mine posted a Facebook picture of me when I first met him 10 years ago. I was like, wow, how cute I was. But anyway, now I'm like, oh, gosh.
It's because you smile so much.
So, but the reality is, as long as I am expressing in a human body, in a physical universe, this is going to get older. This is going to have wrinkles. This is going to have gray hair, loss of hair. My youthful beauty is not permanent. And so that's reality. And not just for me, but billions of other people on the planet and millions of people who have ever lived on Earth for centuries, millennia. And here I am thinking, oh my gosh! As if it's never happened before. This is delusion, and it causes us suffering. Now, I may know, of course everything's impermanent. Of course, but I may have an emotional attachment to permanence. You see? I may intellectually know, of course everything's impermanent, but I may have certain emotional attachments to permanence, like my body being alive forever, because I have this fear. What's going to happen when I die? But when you observe reality, you have to realize you are going to die. There's no exceptions, except in some religions there are, but for most of us, no exceptions. Everyone will die. Everyone gets older, everyone ages, everyone gets sick at some point, and everyone dies. This is just reality of the physical world. But if we have an attachment to the opposite, we create suffering. For example, I may believe intellectually in impermanence, but then when I lose something in my life, I have so much suffering over it. Now, I intellectually know that my mother and my father will not always be alive in the human physical form that they're in. But I'm not emotionally ready for that reality because I still bump into that inner attachment to them being alive forever. But I know that's not reality. So I'm still working with that. I'm still meditating with that, But if I had a loved one die on me, there is the normal response of grief that everyone has as a human being. If you didn't have it, I'd think there's some problem. But there's always a normal human grief, and it lasts for a few minutes, hours, days, maybe weeks. But if it lasts for months and years and decades, that's a clue to you that there's something not quite right in your mind. Because normal human grief doesn't last that long. It happens, you express it, you release it, you cry, and then you move on. But if you're not able to move on, that means that you are creating your own suffering because you have an internal, unconscious, emotional attachment to permanence, to unreality. So, you see, painful things happen. The Buddha did not come to remove our pain. The Buddha came to teach us how to transform our suffering. And there's a difference. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So pain would be like me walking over here and, ow, stubbing my toe. Oh, that's pain. It's unpleasant. It's a sensation. It's like throbbing, a little burning, whatever. That's just pain. And pain just happens. But the problem is not with pain. The problem is now my human mind not only senses the pain, it now creates a story around the pain. Oh my gosh, I just stubbed my toe, but the hospital's closed today, so I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow. And by the time I get there, oh my gosh, I'll probably have gangrene, and they're going to have to amputate my leg, and then I'm going to be one-footed person for the rest of my life. Nobody's going to want to be my partner or spouse. I'm going to die an old man all alone on my deathbed. That's suffering. Pain, suffering. Can you see the difference? And the Buddha did not come to remove our pain, but rather to help us to stop creating the suffering around our pain and pleasure in life. So, confirmation from the universe that this is so. So we need to actually practice mindfulness and meditation in order to really root out every single aspect of this attachment to unreality. Because until they get all rooted out, like, have you ever weeded in a garden? If you don't get to the roots of the weed, it'll grow back again in a few weeks. So you don't just take off the leaves. A good gardener goes deep into the soil to take all the different roots of that weed, to remove it. And this is what we do in mindfulness and meditation, which is why it's a practice. Like gardening is a practice. You know? We can't just say, oh God, please make my garden grow, you know. Something's going to grow, but it may not be pretty. No, a true gardener knows that God has given us the gift of gardening, and we do the work of God through practice. So true prayer is not just about begging God. True prayer is taking the tools God has already given us and working with our mind, meditating, practicing mindfulness, using the processes that we've learned from our spiritual teachers to uproot all the delusion, all the craving, and all the aversion that causes us so much suffering in life. That's true prayer. That's true religion. Not begging God, but taking what God has given you and applying it in practical spiritual practice. That's true religion. That's true prayer. And that's true wisdom. All right. Thank you.